Hi, I'm Father Jason Bowden, and I am the Canon for International Missions here in the Diocese of Quincy. And I want to introduce you to a weekly interview series of your brothers and sisters, those who are called to be missionaries here in the Diocese of Quincy. You may wonder, why are we doing these things? Why are we in the countries that we're in? Hopefully, these interview questions and series can answer some of those questions for you and dispel any rumors of what might be out there. We, as missionaries here in the diocese, pay our own way. Yes, we ask for donations, but we pay for our own travel, our own lodging, our own food, and we represent you, the members of the Diocese of Quincy. So I implore you to please watch these videos and hear from your brothers and sisters who are the hands and feet of Jesus Christ in other countries. God bless you. I am joined today by Becky Karlowicz, the chair of Quincy International, which is the international arm of the Diocese of Quincy. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
We are currently at one of our other ministries, which is our diocesan church camp, and we're taking the opportunity to talk about Quincy International and the things we do. Tell me about Quincy International and how it relates to Mission Colombia.
So Quincy International is, as you said, the international arm of the Diocese of Quincy. So the Diocese of Quincy is blessed to be in many different countries. The United States, of course, Mexico, Colombia, and then we have our sister relationships in Myanmar and Thailand and Brazil. So Quincy International, the idea behind it is that it is kind of the overreaching umbrella, which all those countries sit under, so that if any of those countries have needs, we have a way to serve them, whether monetarily or spiritually, things like that.
Okay. So when we drill down into Mission Colombia, then, what are the things that we help people with?
Well, we help people with meeting some of their most basic needs, but also providing joys that we would take for granted here in the United States. So everything from the community kitchen in Puerto Valdivia to we've just recently taken over monthly stipends from the diocese. So it's not going out that way. It's going through donations to simple joys. Christmas gifts for the children. There was a young girl who turned 15, which is a big deal in Colombia, the quinceañera. We bought a dress for her because her family wouldn't have been able to provide one for her. To birthday cakes, to the baker who makes the cakes in Puerto Valdivia, giving her an oven and a mixer, things beyond their wildest dreams that we take for granted here.
Right. So recently we had a very big project that we did a ribbon cutting on. Talk about that a little bit.
Sure. So we dedicated, classes haven't started quite yet, but a sewing school in Puerto Valdivia for women primarily, although I think there are a few men signed up as well, to learn how to sew. There are a lot of clothing manufacturers in Colombia, and so sewing, fabric, pattern making, all of that is a highly regarded trade in Colombia. And so we had the vision a couple of years ago to open a sewing school there. We worked with, through Father Cliff Park's ARDF, Anglican Relief and Development Fund, and got a grant for $15,000, which we had to match. And we raised $15,000 collectively from October 2025 to January 2026. And I had a vision that we would raise enough money to be able to open it on our annual trip, which was in April of 2026. And we had one particular donor who, when I shared that with him, he was like, I don't want you to worry about it. I want you to plan for it, and donated the remaining couple thousand we needed on the spot.
Excellent. So talking about the annual trips, what do those look like?
It's funny because, as you know, if you'd asked me a handful of years ago, would I ever go on a mission trip to Colombia, I would have told you no. But they started out as some of our church camp staff going down. But we fly from Illinois to Medellin with a few stops on the way. Maybe we'll work on that direct flight. And once we're in country, we're met by Father Hooley and his dad. And then we typically spend a couple days in Medellin. Father Hooley has some churches there and some ministries there. One that's near and dear to my heart is the grandfathers and the grandmothers, as it translates, but the abuelos and the abuelas, a nursing home for abandoned elderly. And then we go to Puerto Valdivia, which is 6-ish hour bus ride through the mountains, up and down and up and down.
Over clouds.
Over clouds, under clouds, in clouds. And then minister to the village there where we've built a church and a community kitchen, and the kids go to school. It's a village with, I think they told us last, about 60 to 80 kids. Depends. It's people move in and out. Most of the kids either have a mother or an aunt or a grandmother. There's only a couple adult males really in the village because most of them have abandoned their families. So it's really a village that, what's the saying? A village takes a village to raise a child. It is a village raising the children. And so spend time there, ministering to them, loving on them, and then I don't want to leave when I go home. So,
and you bring up a good point, because we're sitting within eye shot for us of where we had a conversation one night, and I'm putting you on the spot, but you said to me, why is the Diocese of Quincy in Colombia? And I said to you, you need to go.
And I said,
when my kids get older.
Right.
She did. So someone that would have the same feeling you had a couple of years ago, why is the Diocese of Quincy in Colombia? What would you say to those people?
I would say because at its roots, the Diocese of Quincy was founded in God's love. And if you think about the history of the Diocese of Quincy, which you and I both cradle Diocese of Quincyans. Ooh, is that a word? Quincyans? But, was it Bishop Philander Chase who formed the Diocese of Quincy in the Illinois Plains? So,
the patron saint of Paul.
With the patron saint of Paul.
And Paul, being a missionary apostle, wanted us to go.
Right. So
what do you say to those people that say, why are we in Colombia?
Well, so
erasing the history
right.
of the Diocese of Quincy. Why should we be in Colombia?
Well, first, I hate to admit you were right, but you did say you should go. And I didn't think mission was at all my calling, right? Like, I think you have to go because, or why we're there. That's really your question, not why should you go, but why are we there is because that's what God has called us to do. And if you're sitting at a table with a friend and they tell you that God has called them to do something, or God has called the diocese to do something, who are any of us to say, I don't think God's called you to do that. And when I first went on my first trip, and I've blessed to have been there 4 times now, but on my first trip, when we were leaving Puerto Valdivia, and there was an accident on the road, and so we were stopped on that bus for a really long time. Like, I was sitting there crying, and I went up to the bishop and I said, I get it now. And it is the love that I first experienced through the Diocese of Quincy, and that what keeps me here, and spreading that love to people there. And who is any of us to say that we shouldn't share the gospel with them?
Yeah, absolutely. What do you think is probably, I would say, the biggest myth that people would have here in the United States about being in Colombia?
Well, a couple come to mind. First, I think that people think it's it's like some of the Compassion International and those other nonprofit organizations that you see the kids like Skin and Bones and
Drinking out of muddy water.
Yes, and that it's not like that. Some of the questions I get are things like, well, why do they have cell phones? If they can't afford food, why do they have cell phones? Well, they don't have landlines, so how do they communicate with each other? And cell phones are cheap in Colombia. But I think that's part of the myth, is like that people either think it's super poor, or they see some of the things we post and they're like, they're not that poor. But they are dirt floor poor. I mean, most of their homes, which they are so proud of, and they should be, have tin roofs, maybe a tarp for a wall in some areas. I mean, Puerto Valdivia has completely changed by us being there, and they've told us that. But so I would say that it's a misnomer or a myth or whatever that they're either way, way poor or they're not poor. I think another myth is that the diocese just sends all its money down there, and that's not true.
Correct.
We have a lot of very generous donors. Every missionary pays their way. Airline tickets. Every missionary makes a contribution to Mission Colombia that covers all their expenses that they don't pay for prior to going.
Right. How do you think we've affected their lives?
Well, I mean, we have for sure changed their lives. We often say, right, we thought we'd go there to change their lives and they changed ours, which is also true, but we have 100% changed their lives. Kids that didn't have more than one meal a day, if that. And when I say meal a day, I mean like maybe a scoop of rice or a tortilla and maybe some beans, like, which isn't a meal.
Which was dinner typically.
Right.
So they went to school all day and with nothing.
Nothing. Yes. So us opening the kitchen and continuing to fund the kitchen month after month means now the kids get at least 2 meals, and often there's enough leftovers for them to have a third. And so, I mean, there's kids that their illness and malnutrition, their eyes are crossed and things like that. And the kids are a lot healthier because they're nourished.
So if missionary is not for everybody, missionary work.
For sure.
What would you say to the people that are like, I'm not going to a third world country? How can they support Mission Colombia and Quincy International?
Sure. So you don't have to go to a third world country to support Mission Colombia or Quincy International. First and foremost, pray. God asks us all to pray. Praying individually, praying corporately, putting it in your church's prayers for the people. That's what we do at St. Michael's. There is a permanent line, and we read that we pray for our brothers and sisters in Colombia, Mexico, Myanmar, and Brazil. You can support financially. We have Venmo and PayPal, and you can mail a check to the diocesan office. But get your church involved. Do a fundraiser specifically for Colombia.
Yeah.
Sponsor a month for the kitchen.
Absolutely.
Lots of opportunities.
Right now, it should be said that at Synod every year, right, we send around a year's worth of sign up for sponsoring a month. And the churches of the Diocese of Quincy have taken those, although some of the churches in the Diocese of Quincy have to take more than one.
Right.
So if this is something that interests you, you need to speak to your priest and tell them that we need to get behind this. The Christmas gifts, let's jump back to that real quick, because I know that a lot of people said to me in the beginning, why are we sending them Christmas gifts? But can you talk about the difference in kids that are poor in America and kids that are poor in Colombia?
Sure. So, I mean, one of the benefits of the United States, right, is that there's a lot of organizations here supporting, whether it's the Salvation Army or, all the different toy organization things. In Colombia, I mean, the kids don't have toys. I remember on her first trip, I taught kids how to use sidewalk chalk. What kid in the United States has to be taught how to use sidewalk chalk? But that just shows you, right? Like they don't have these simple joys. And so we partner with Father Hooley and his wife Bibi and Father Sinning to find out how many kids they have. And it really ends up being about $10 per child.
Which is about $40.
Which is about, US. Exactly. Or $40 there or whatever. And we're able to buy the missionaries in Puerto Valdivia a nice pair of shoes or a nice outfit of some sort. The kids all get a nice outfit that's not a hand-me-down from the United States. And then they get something simple, like a ball or a doll or something that brings such joy to their face.
Right.
And it's just amazing to see God work in that way and to see that joy being fulfilled.
Absolutely. Talk about what it's like to pull up in a van for the first time and reach the Soros village in Puerto Valdivia, Colombia.
Well, so they are so excited that we're there. They have American flags waving. They have Colombian flags waving. Not the entire village, but the entire church community, which has about 30 families, is there, just anxiously awaiting. And, it's almost a little bit like Rockstar, right? We each get out of the van. This last trip, I got out there chanting my name, and I'm like, oh my gosh. But I don't know if you remember me telling you this, but when I first decided to go, and I didn't wait for my girls to be old enough because they're both under 12, I said to you, those young girls need a female role model, not just a bunch of priests. And so this last trip when I got off and there were 6 or 7 10 to 12-year-old girls chanting and running at me to give me a hug, I was like, this is what God wanted me to do.
It's like Jesus is running towards you.
Yes.
It really is.
Absolutely. The love they have for us and we have for them is incredible.
And a couple of particular stories. Number one, being a young man who was putting himself in a very dangerous position, not only to provide food for himself and his mother, but also for her medical needs. We have been able to help support him now and keep
Mm-hmm.
him out of that danger. But talk about Sandra.
Sure. So Sandra is in her mid-20s. Um, she has opened a bakery in Puerto Valdivia. I mentioned earlier the oven and mixing her mixer that we bought for her. She went to school for her schooling through an organization called SENA, which is a part of the Colombian Department of Work. I know more about Colombia than I ever thought I would know. Anyway, we actually got to tour where she went to school on this last trip. And so she learned how to be a certified baker. The way SENA works is you complete the program, and as long as you work for 2 years in that profession post graduation, then you don't have to pay back any of your schooling expenses. And so she did that. She's opened a bakery. When we were there last December, she baked us a cake. It was delicious.
Yes.
And then when we were there in April, she baked cake as well for the party we had post church. But she also bakes the bread that they use in communion. She'd done that for Holy Week this year for the first time. And so just seeing someone like that who has, to use the American phrase, like pulled themselves up by their bootstraps, right? And she brought that to Father Hooley and said, Sena can do other things for this village. And I think that was what was the most exciting about our last trip, as we started to see a path to self-sufficiency. And whoever would have thought that even 2 years ago?
Yeah, because I mean, even the sewing school, right? Like what they're making while they're learning is sold so that the next cohort of women can take the classes.
Yeah.
And we learned also this last trip that, you know, used to be when I was with my grandmother, we'd go to Joann Fabrics and we'd get patterns, but the 3 big pattern makers in the United States have closed.
Yeah.
So they're also learning pattern making.
Yeah. Which is awesome.
It's very exciting.
Yeah.
What about what do you see in the difference in the spiritual side of them versus us, being Colombia versus the West?
If everybody could be as excited about going to church as they are in Colombia, what a different church we'd have here. But they are a truly spiritual people. And I think that comes from not having so much stuff and having to be dependent on God as their provider.
Absolutely. Yeah, this is like when we say our daily bread, they don't know if they're getting bread.
They do not know if they're getting bread.
And thankfully, due to the generous hearts of the people of the Diocese of Quincy, we've been able to provide.
Yeah, absolutely.
Even to the point of a freezer for a man who fishes for fish, who also in Puerto Valdivia is a part of the church and a part of the vestry there.
He's their senior warden.
And we offered to buy him a refrigerator, right?
Yeah.
And he asked very graciously, if it's the same price, could I have a freezer instead? And why was that?
He wanted a freezer because on the days where he has really big catches, he wanted to be able to save that fish, to be able to sell it, to earn money for himself, but also to share with people of the village who can't fish. It's another way that food is being provided through the church community.
Absolutely. So to wrap it up, why are we in Colombia?
Because God's called us to be there. And without a shadow of a doubt in my mind, that's why we're there.
Yeah.
Not the bishop, not anybody else. God. And it's going to continue long past any of us, I hope.
Amen. Thank you.
Thank you.